Welcome to Childcare Rockstar Radio. I am your host, Chris Murray. Childcare leaders around the globe are breaking through challenges, leading the way in innovation, testing new best practices, and impacting children and families in a much more powerful and positive way than ever before. Each week, join me for interviews with early childhood leaders and experts that will leave you inspired to become the next childcare rockstar. Now, let's go. This is Childcare Rockstar Radio, episode 97, featuring Danielle Paige. Welcome back to the podcast, everybody. It's Chris Murray, your host. Happy New Year once again, and I want to say thank you for taking the time out of your very busy life to check in with me and what's going on with my podcast guests and here in the early childhood, the leading business podcast for early childhood here at Childcare Rockstar Radio. And I feel very grateful and blessed to be bringing this to you. We are counting down quickly to episode 100, and I have a extra special guest. Today's guest is very special, Miss Danielle Paige. I'm going to tell you about her in a minute, but we have an extra special guest surprise coming up on episode 100. So I'm looking forward to bringing her to you. And with that, I am sitting here in my office space / training center in downtown Carbondale, Colorado. And I have a new addition to the podcast, which is some artwork, Childcare Rockstar Radio branded artwork. And then I have an amazing neon sign that my team helped me get implemented and hung. And then this beautiful piece of art taking us back to a look of 1950s Americana. Very, very cool. I absolutely adore this painting. And shout out to Lawrence Banco, who is Cindy Alexander's brother. He's quite an artist, and he created this for us. So we got to get these janky looking neon sign plugs put into the wall behind us, into this beautiful wall, so that we can not have to see those cords. But for now, just letting it roll. We're letting it all hang out here on the podcast. And today's episode featuring Danielle Paige is quite meaty, and I know you're going to love it, with regard to overcoming difficult, challenging, stressful, and even relationships gone sour with your licensing agent, and how to turn that ship around and take a school that might be seen as a risky center, a center with a lot of violations that maybe you inherited and it has a questionable reputation, and then steps that you can take to turn that around into your favor. And Danielle shared that she got licensed in record time in her second location. I think she said it took her something like 38 days from the time that they purchased the location till the time that they got licensed, which is incredible. So now this young lady who is super on fire lives in Philly. Her schools are in Long Island, and she has entered the world of licensing consulting and helping you guys get up and running with your licensing. And we need that. We need that from seasoned experts in our field who, while they may be young, have a ton of expertise, energy, and drive. And that's what Danielle brings. And her website is childcaresites.com, SITES. And we share a bunch of resources for how you can learn about where your next location should be, site selection, and different components around business opportunities in the childcare space coming up on the podcast. So you're not going to want to miss this one. And personally, I am just coming off of a 7-day challenge. It was the 6 Figures in 7 Days challenge. And many of you, 1,400 of you almost, were on that challenge with me. And dozens, if not hundreds of you actually experienced the result of the 6-figure payoff just by taking the baby steps during a 7-day micro window of time. Incredible. People were enrolling 5, 10, 18, and even 20 children enrolled in a week's time. Shout out to Kim Pomeris, one of my Empire members. She hit her goals for enrollment way back on January 8th and is going to keep going. But to hit your January enrollment goal for 20 new kids on the 8th of the month is pretty amazing. And I give her a shout out, as well as many, many, many other ladies and guys who did amazing things in that challenge. So I had a blast with you, and the level of engagement and community and sharing was incredible. And so if you were with me on that challenge, thank you. I do have another training that we're in the middle of doing right now. We promoted something called a Student and Staff Attraction Boot Camp, which is brand new. And by the time you listen to this episode here, episode 97, the doors will already have been closed and we will already be into our 6-week intensive training. And that is our very first time of taking enrollment and student attraction, family attraction techniques, plus team staff attraction, and laying them all out in an integrated 6-week intensive and building out those funnels, those ways of attracting both clients and teachers to your program more than you ever need, and putting those things on automation and systemization so that you can constantly be filling your funnel with great families and great teacher candidates. So who doesn't want that? So that's what we're in the middle of building out right now as this episode releases in the 3rd week of January. But so we are, just doing amazing things with you guys here in 2021. We're excited. We're about to go be together in person, our very first in-person event for the entire academy, because last year, I was going to say, from the minute the pandemic hit in March all the way through, we have not all met in person since that time. So we're all very excited to be flying into Tampa and being together in Sand Key. Although many of you are still choosing to stay at home and just experience it virtually. And as we flow into 2021 and things loosen up, we will have more and more and more chances to be together. And I can't wait for all of those. I can't wait to give you guys all hugs and be together in many different places this year. So that's what I'm celebrating. I'm celebrating so much on the personal side and the professional side, and really thinking about where I want to take my life in 2021 and beyond. I feel like I've hit a lot of goals. We crushed our revenue and profitability goal in the company. We've helped thousands of you. We're getting close to the 1 million child mark in terms of impact. And I'm kind of sitting back now and just trying to enjoy it. My word for the year is joy. It's my intention. And I don't want to necessarily really rush anything or jump into anything. I just want to kind of sit with where we've been and what we've experienced together as a tribe and as human beings and moms and dads and business owners, and reflect and just kind of, evolve and help you elevate and evolve, and always just bring the highest level of value that I can to the world of early learning business. So that's what we're going to do here at the Child Care Success Company. And I hope that you are along with me for the ride. All right, let's dig into episode 97 and meet Danielle again. Danielle was actually with us earlier in the podcast. She was an up and coming rising star, and I interviewed her back on episode 60, all about her ability to manage a school remotely. She was managing a program that she owns with her dad that's based in Long Island, and she had just moved to Philly. And so we talked about how to extricate yourself from your school and just focus on it and work on the business from a remote location. And now she's got 2 locations on Long Island, and Academic Explorers is thriving. And Danielle is doing, again, this consulting for you guys to help you with licensing and site selection and just opening your doors. If you're new to the world of all of that, especially. But even if you're seasoned, she can help you. So get to know her here on this episode and enjoy. Welcome back, everybody, to Childcare Rockstar Radio. This is Chris Murray, your host, and I am thrilled to bring to you today an awesome guest. Not only has she been here once, but I'm bringing her back again for a second go-round here at the podcast. Welcome back, Danielle Paige. How are you today?
I'm good, Chris. Thank you so much for having me back. So
You're
excited
welcome.
to be here.
Great to see you again. And she first appeared on episode 60. We wanted to dig in today on the topic of licensing and expansion to site number 2 and the process that Danielle went through with her licensing rep and how she turned, I guess, a painful relationship into a win. So we'll dive all into that. But before we do, let's find out a little bit more about what you got going on right now. Danielle, where are you right now? Where you happen to be sitting?
I am home. I'm in my home office in my apartment in Philadelphia. I just got back here. I came from New York this morning. So I went to go visit my centers last night. I typically do that at least 2 or 3 times a month. So I was there yesterday and came back today. So I'm home.
Awesome. And tell us more about your centers and where they're located versus how far away you live from the schools.
Sure. Yeah. My centers are in New York, in Long Island, Nassau County. And I live in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania now. I just moved here June of 2019. So it's a year and a half already. Wow, time flies. I had last time I was on with you, I had just moved and was still getting adjusted to being an offsite owner. So time definitely does fly. And I travel back and forth like 2 or 3 times a month, and it's about 130 miles away. So like 2.5 hours.
Gotcha. And you have 2 schools, and what is their capacity and current enrollment?
My first location has a 78 capacity. And we are full to the extent of what licensing will allow right now because of COVID. They have reduced our maximum class sizes to 15 or less children in New York. Thankfully, that didn't hurt us too much because we have infants, toddlers, and we had smaller rooms to begin with. But we do have 2 rooms that did get impacted by that rule. So that center is full to what is allowed right now. And our second center that we just opened in September is smaller. The capacity is 44. And we have 36 children right now.
Awesome. So congrats on your second location. Since you were on the podcast originally, you have expanded to site number 2.
Yes,
yeah. How's it going? Like, so from 1 to 2 is what we find to be oftentimes the biggest jump in yourself, as thinking about yourself as a leader, as a scalability component, that you actually can't cover both sites at once. And you're already doing that because you were already set up to work remotely and visit your schools,
right.
a couple times a month from Philly. So how has the transition gone for you in terms of going from 1 to 2?
Like you said, I had already kind of transitioned myself out of the program. Last year, we upgraded to the freedom level in the academy once I did that. And I think that really helped because if I didn't move away and limit myself to only visiting a couple times a month, I think it would have been a lot more rough. I set my administrators up in center number 1 to kind of operate things within systems. We do a lot of things digitally with DocuSign, Google Drive. I'm still able to access pretty much every document that we have because we just, instead of using binder systems, we put everything on the computer in a cloud so we can all access it. So that there has been no hiccups with feeling like, I can't tear myself into two because, I've already been away. But we have had hiccups in the beginning with focusing so much on we were rushing through the licensing process that we didn't really slow down to make sure that the systems that we did have in place in center number one were going to transfer well to center number two, with it being a smaller size and not quite set up yet. So just doing copy paste like we thought would happen didn't really happen.
Right. That's interesting.
Yeah.
If you could look back at, because you also were very brave to expand in the summer of 2020. If you could look back at that time between when you opened in August or July?
We signed the lease in August and we got the license September 8th.
Okay. Gotcha. Which is a difficult time to open to some degree. It's great, but it's also, I know September was very difficult for people this year with what went on in the school systems.
Yeah.
Making it difficult to really try to plan and get parents set up so that it was stable.
Mm-hmm.
So with that, if you could have done anything differently, would you have changed anything that you did in your startup of center number two?
Yeah, I definitely would have focused more so on making sure, like I mentioned before, that our systems were in place prior to the first day. So like, to give an example, we didn't have ice packs. Like, a child had an incident and we didn't have an ice pack in the building because we forgot to go through a checklist of things that we had in storage and make sure we also had that over there. So we had to run out and get ice packs.
Gotcha.
I also would have definitely reached out to the public school district in that area prior to even signing the lease. I forgot that is something I did before signing in our first location. And the reason I did that for the first location is because I was interested in universal pre-K, which is free public school for children 3 and 4 years old. We have a contract in that area with the school district. They pay us to have families that live in that district to come to our center. But on top of that contract, we also have a good relationship with them where, those families that go to those schools are also coming to us. We have not done that yet at our second location. And I think that was mostly because of the chaos surrounding COVID. You have a great suggestion of doing muffin runs and stuff. We used to do that a lot in our first location, and we haven't made any contact with the school district now at our second one. So just making a phone call or trying to reach out and get known in the community before stepping in is something I would have done a little differently.
Well, that makes sense. And those are great ahas to share with the listeners and the viewers, is things that, because I just think sometimes you don't think about the checklist of stuff and then some of those other components. So that's very, very good. So let's talk a little bit about, I wanted to ask you also, just in your marketing and in your branding, and I know that you're a pretty strong marketer. What are some of the things that really set Academic Explorers apart from other programs that you compete with? Maybe, 2, 3, or 4 things that really are kind of like your linchpins of your branding.
Yeah, so I believe that we're unique in that we're really centered around family. It's a family owned business. I own it with my dad. It's not just me. So even though I can't be there every day, he's certainly there like 3 or 4 times a week, pretty much every day, just going in and like dropping off coffee or donuts or something,
Cool.
and help whatever needs to be done or needs to be run out to get, like he's there to do it. And he goes in there and he treats all of the children that are there and the staff like they're his own kids. I get jealous sometimes. So every decision that we make as owners is done with love in our hearts. And that makes tough decisions really hard for us. Like if we have to let somebody go, or even a family, if we're not the right program for them, it's tough because of that. So that's one. And then I think that we also do our best to be professional and welcoming. And we learned a lot of those strategies from the Success Academy, like, how to answer the phone properly. That alone, definitely helps us to stand out from the rest of the community.
Yeah.
And we also, just a quick side note, we just a few months ago we have a school song. We took our kids to a recording studio, made up a song because we had a singer that was on staff with us at the time. He is a professional singer, so he knew a recording studio. We got that song and we put it on as our phone, like, what's it called? A ring-back option. Instead of hearing the phone ringing, they hear our school song playing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's that's a warm welcome. I believe we get a lot of comments about that.
Yep.
And I also think that we do our best to try to exemplify ourselves as an educational institution where early learners can actually be learning rather than just, playing all day, and not being taught the foundations of education. So, and that's exemplified when we answer the phone, during tours, when parents come in for meetings. We try our best to always be professional. And the last thing, we have a van, we do transportation, and it's wrapped with our logo. So whenever we are out to pick up children in the community, people see it as we're driving. And we often see people in their cars, like with their phones out, trying to write down the number. And when we get phone calls, we ask, because after doing your phone skills training, how did you hear about us? And a lot of times it's, I saw your van, or I was driving behind your van.
Yeah.
So we've learned to keep flyers in the van because of that.
Perfect. I love that. It's mobile signage, guys. So
yes, the driving billboard is what we call it.
Yeah.
And that was my dad's idea. I gave him a little pushback about doing that because it was expensive, and I don't know why I didn't think it was a good idea, but it's a really good idea. If you guys can afford to do it, go for it.
Yeah, for sure. Love that.
Yeah.
And if you can put some charming elements into the wrap as well, obviously your logo and your phone number and website, but also, 5-star rated, or some fun things into the branding on the van. So I love that.
Like, look, kids, it's not just our logo. It's like kids set up in like a little school building, like cartoon characters kind of, with our logo, and a little, like, I think our hours are on there, the fact that the age groups that we accept. So it's definitely helpful.
Nice. Love that. So that's a writer downer. Thanks for sharing those, Danielle. Really, really good.
You're welcome.
And the phone, I love the song component of the phone message. I think answering messages are, like, not a lot of people utilize that kind of marketing. This is a natural place to put something charming and leverage the charming aspects and the personality of your school and the children singing. And you want to pull those heartstrings into your marketing and leverage what you're already doing, whether it's, showing amazing moments of learning through Facebook Lives, or showing a video of the kids all singing on the way to the field trip in the van or bus, or showing, or using this song component on your phone message. So those are all attention grabbing strategies and techniques that you guys should be using. So they're very memorable. So it really set you apart. So I love that.
Mm-hmm. And even if, just to finish that point off, like we started off with a minivan, a regular minivan. So that's something that I wouldn't have thought that we could wrap that type of vehicle. But if you are in a position, if anybody listening is in a position where they don't have like a big passenger van, you can start with a minivan.
Yeah, absolutely. I believe one of our members who has an enrollment specialist that travels around her town has a wrapped minivan that she gave as a gift, as a bonus to her enrollment specialist, as a perk.
Oh, nice.
And so, because the enrollment specialist is driving amongst all the 10 schools, so why not have a wrapped minivan?
Yeah.
So it's good.
Yeah.
Really, really good. Tell us a little bit about what's going on for you at home these days. I know that we haven't had that much fun lately with what's happened in 2020, and your dad is popping into your school. So I love that you co-own it with your dad. Mm-hmm. Do you have kids? Are you married? Are you dating? Are you?
I do have a boyfriend. And I recently moved again this summer. I'm still in Philadelphia, only a few miles away. It's actually the sister building to where I lived before, and I moved in with him. So this is a new experience for me. And he also works remotely. He's a software engineer, something in tech. And we share an office, so that's been interesting. I just kicked him out to do this interview, and we argue every day because of it. But we love it, and I think that this experience has been put us in a position where we're together every single day. It's not. I've never experienced something like this before in dating. You know. So it's made us very close really quickly.
That's great. Yeah. Living together is a huge step, and congrats on that. And it is totally different than living apart. And so fingers crossed that things all work out.
Yes. Fingers crossed. But I don't have any kids. And that's really it. I'm someone that has been taking COVID really seriously, and we don't really go anywhere or do anything. I think once in October we took a road trip to go visit one of my cousins that lives in New Hampshire. But that has been the extent of our getting out and doing anything since March of last year.
Yeah.
So I'm just working at home pretty much every day unless I'm at my centers.
Good. Well, my fiance and I moved in together in July, got engaged in June, and we moved into a home that has a smaller home office than what I had before. And he's a loud talker, Danielle. So he's always on his speaker constantly, and he's all on the phone like almost all the time. And then he's got it on speaker, and he's a loud talker. And I'm just like, okay, I'm never going to be able to share an office with this guy. Not happening.
It's funny because I am that person in this. So if he heard you say that, you would have just made his point.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, I had to get this incentivized me to get this awesome office space, which is my home away from office home, which is fantastic. So you might be on that path as well. Let's talk a little bit about the licensing component. So you shared with me recently that you overcame a troubled relationship with your licensing rep, and you kind of felt like when you first were going through the licensing process and you had 13 violations, that she was out to get you. And many people feel that way about their licensing rep. And then you turned it around through a series of steps and strategies. So share with us a little bit about how it started and then how you turned it into a win.
Yeah. So when we opened my first center, We were not taking over, because the license was pending revocation. And because of that, and reasons I guess I won't ever really know, the owner decided to close permanently. Even though, from what I understand, she didn't have to. The status was just pending. But she was done with the business. She told me she had owned the center for about 10 years and something, I don't remember her story, but it didn't have the best reputation. And I don't know if, because of that, even though we didn't take over that program, we formed a new entity and got our own license. I don't know if it was because of that reputation that we were frequently getting visits in the beginning compared to now. Yeah. But when we first opened, I had my licensor changed, like the person changed 3 times. I'm not sure why that was, but they were coming like every 3 to 4 months. But I do know that they do come out for new programs more frequently, but I just felt like they kept coming to me, you know? So the third and final licensor that we had and still have, her first visit to me, I wasn't there when she arrived. Our program is 6:30 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. It's 12 hours long. And at that time, I think I had just transitioned to like, okay, I'm not going to be there all day and all night. I'll come in around like 9 o'clock and another teacher can open and it'll be fine. And at that time, I didn't have an assistant director. It was just, we didn't have many children coming, period, but definitely not that early in the morning. So when she came, I wasn't there. I showed up a few minutes after, but she had already walked around the whole entire building and citing all of her violations with no director there to give explanations about what was going on or why certain things were happening. And when I got there, I don't know how it works in all states or everywhere of the world, but for us in New York, at least in my program, it usually starts off with a meeting in the office and then the inspector walking around with the director to view the classrooms, and then another meeting in the office to talk about what was seen. So when we were doing that final meeting and she was breaking everything down to me, I naturally was trying to defend what was my baby. My business is my baby, right. You know? And I just felt like some of the things that she was citing was unfair. Like there was, I remember one of the violations we received was a teacher had a baby in a bouncer, and it was bright in the classroom. So she put a blanket over the bouncer, like how you would a car seat, so that the baby could fall back asleep. Right. And what was cited was the language was something crazy, like either hazardous or I forget what the language is, but with us in New York, they don't tell you specifically what the incident was that resulted in that violation on the report. So I knew what was going to be shown was going to be embarrassing and taken way out of proportion, you know? So it was little things like that I just felt were unfair. And it ultimately led to us having to go to a meeting with the licensing agency and them strongly encouraging and suggesting that we make renovations inside of our building, because one of the violations was our children had to walk through a classroom in order to get to a bathroom, which they considered to be mixing age groups, which is not allowed.
Wow.
So we had to make alterations inside, which we couldn't afford, didn't want to do. It was a lot. But after a few months and after we did make those alterations, our program did flow better. like things did start making more sense.
Mm-hmm.
And I understood the severity of certain situations that I didn't in the beginning. I was coming from being a home daycare provider to now running a center.
Yep.
And even though that initial conversation with her felt like an attack on me personally, looking back at it a few months later, it was in the best interest of the program.
Mm-hmm.
So we've grown. Our relationship has become what's the word? Respectful and cordial, and I'm happy to speak to her. I can reach out to her with any concerns or questions versus worrying that she might be showing up. We're not scared of licensing anymore. It's a nice feeling to have.
That's great. So what specifically do you think? I mean, I know it's the fact that you took baby steps towards improvement and quality and, making the changes that she was suggesting. And then on the personal side, how did you translate your mindset to she's out to get me, from that to developing the building blocks of a positive relationship with her?
To be really transparent with you, Chris, I don't think that I changed my mindset from she's out to, what I realized is that they have a job to do. It's not her versus me. They have a job to do. And to bring it back to the academy, at one of the academy meetings early last year, you now have Renee on your team, who is a former licensing rep. I remember a presentation that she gave.
Yep.
Where she explained that, licensors, if a program is in the news for something bad that went on in that program, and the licensor never cited them for certain things, the licensor can get in trouble. So I think I just shifted my mindset to she's doing her job, and it's not about me. It's not about my program. She's doing her job. Right. I also had a theory that like they have a quota. I don't know if that's true. Like they must give out certain amount of violations for the month. I don't know.
Yeah.
But I took the person out of it and was like, regardless of who she is, it's just the licensing agency, the licensor has a job to do, and so do we. And we just try to kill them with kindness. And as soon as they come in, offer them something to drink, offer them coffee. They don't take it, they're not allowed, but at least giving that welcoming feeling makes a big difference. And greeting them with a smile instead of, having them wait outside for 10 minutes while you try to get things together.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you, I guess, kind of got your mindset straight about that it is just a job that they're doing, and I'm not going to take this personally, and I'm going to do everything I can to have a positive relationship with her or him. So that's fantastic. I love that.
And call them more, like just as a final quick tip, whenever we were unsure about something, or even if I know the answer to some things, I'll still reach out to the license. I'll still call her. I'll still email her. In the emails, I'm very, overly nice and, wishing her all the best. It's just, just being really nice is something I will say will change the dynamic of the relationship.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Circling back to site number 2, opening in September of 2020. I'm sure some people are listening to that going, wow, that really took a lot of courage. Tell us a little bit about how you found or chose that location. I know it was a smaller one, so maybe it felt more doable, which is great.
Yes.
And how long did it take you? Because it was pretty quick. I mean, if you found it and you signed the lease in August and then you opened on September 15th-ish or September 10th, I mean, that's a quick turnaround. So how did you do that so quickly?
So in the summer, I would say May or June is when we were really like, we we can expand, and we think this is the time to do it because of, I don't know if it had been mentioned yet in certain weekly Q&A calls with the Academy, but there was conversations around a lot of programs that had closed back in March and not reopening, being closed permanently. So we started, just trying to search around to see what opportunities were there. That's something I've always done, even before owning Center Number One. I would always be on Craigslist or be on Biz Buy Sell and just looking at what opportunities exist. I'm big on manifesting things, So even if we're nowhere near ready to expand or open Center Number 3 or 4 or 5, I'm always going to be looking for opportunities. Right. So I was looking around at that time. I had done a few calls with Coach Brian on your team to ask about how we should position ourselves. We've never had a loan before, and we still didn't take one out for this, but we were thinking about it. The first location we were going to go with was a building that we would have had to purchase, and we knew nothing about getting a business loan to purchase a building. So Coach Brian was trying to help me with that. But then I remembered something I used to do, and how I found my first center was by going to our state's childcare search page to find programs who have license status of revoked or pending revocation. And by doing that, it helps me to narrow down what options there might be for owners that might be willing to exit the business. And that's exactly what happened. I found a program that had violation after violation after violation. Every single time they had an inspection, there was a violation, and the license was pending revocation. So, and they were closed. I had looked in to see if they were open, but they had been closed due to COVID for several months. I sent out a letter to that program, and as well as 4 or 5 others, I believe. After receiving one, I think a lot of Academy members received this letter from a bigger company that owns a lot of schools. Do you know what I'm talking about, Coach?
Yeah.
I got that letter in the mail, and I was like, this is a good idea. So I kind of copied that template a little and tried to make it interesting to read and not just a regular Word document. I put pictures of our current location on it. I think I put a picture of myself and my dad. I talked about it being a family business. I used some of the language from you have a template in the in your online resources. I used some of that language in there, and I sent out a letter to 4 or 5 different programs, and one responded, and he was ready to sell immediately. He wanted nothing to do with licensing. He was ready to be out of the business.
Right.
And he's our landlord now, and we love him.
Okay.
So
good. So you bought the business and leased the real estate from them.
We didn't buy the business because their license was in such a bad status. We were considering it. We were considering purchasing their business entity, but our licensing reps warned us that if we were to do that, we would now be responsible for going to court and fixing whatever actions. Yeah, we didn't want to take that over. Yeah. So what we did do was work really seamlessly and quickly with our licensor to get it open. And we got it open in 38 days after signing the lease.
Right. Which is almost record time.
Yes.
From any scenario that I've heard of. So I think it helped that it was a functioning, although it was a struggling, failing business, but it was still functioning as a existing childcare center. So you could kind of swoop right in, make the changes, and go to town. And I'm sure it wasn't necessarily a small amount of work, but at the same time, you were able to get it done in 38 days. That's awesome.
Right.
So now you're helping people, you're helping startups with finding their next location and helping them get it licensed as a consultant. So tell us more about the services that you provide.
Yeah. So in the last episode I did with you last year, I mentioned that I have a YouTube channel, and I started that channel back in, I want to say 2016, when when I just had my home daycare. Well, I started the channel a long time before that, but I didn't get serious about posting frequently until that time. And at that time, my channel really focused nothing around daycare, but I had mentioned in a few videos that I had a daycare program, and I was showing it in a few videos, and I got a lot of people asking me questions about it. Like a surprising amount of people wanted to know how I did it or what's it like, or they'll relate like, oh, it was in Queens, New York. So they were like, I'm in Queens, like, how do I get licensed? So instead of answering everybody's comments, I mentioned that I have an email address, and I asked them to email me and that I would help them. So that's kind of how I got started doing this, just doing it through email, and trying to figure out a way to do it bigger and better, which is what I did over the past 2 years. I created a website. It's called childcaresites.com. And people can book me for consultations if they are in the US and trying to start a licensed program in the US. I help them figure out who their licensing agency is, where they're located, what their regulations are, and how to read them, and what they should be looking for in the regs when they're considering starting up. Like a lot of people don't know that there's a minimum square footage amount that you need to have for the amount of children that you want to have in your program. So kind of doing that math with them and figuring out what their goals are for their startup. And taking it from there. And I help them find and get in contact with their local childcare resource and referral agency if they have one, because I get asked a lot if I can come help them set up their program, and that's not something that I do, but their childcare resource and referral agency will most likely be able to and can and might do it for free. So just pointing people in the right direction is what I do, because when I first started, I didn't have anybody to do that for me. I went months without. There's a subsidy in New York City, where my program was located in Queens, in the borough of New York City, called ACS, where ACS will pay the market rate for children in your care. And I was in a lower income area where many of my families, once I grew, were ACS parents. I went the first 6 or 7 months without having that, just because I didn't know where to turn, who to call, or how to get signed up for that kind of contract. It wasn't until I hired somebody who had an aunt that ran a daycare that called me and told me, yeah, call this person. So I just want to be that person for other people, just to make their startup process easier and give them contacts and point them in the right direction.
That's awesome. I love that, Danielle. So if somebody's listening to this and they want to learn more about hiring you for help, how should they get in touch with you?
They can go to, they can email me at, my email is danny@childcaresites.com, or they can go to childcaresites.com and book me for a consultation straight on that website.
Okay. And it's childcaresites, sites.com, and Danny is DANI.
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome, at childcaresites.com.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, that's fantastic. And we here at the Child Care Success Academy don't really offer one-on-one licensing and startup consult services. So I was excited to find out that Danielle is doing that for folks. And it's a much needed service. And so thank you for doing that and for providing that to the field.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for allowing me to share that with everyone.
Absolutely. And some of the sites that you like to go to, I mean, you mentioned when you're looking for business opportunities, you mentioned Craigslist, you mentioned Biz Buy Sell, and you and I have also talked about Childcare Desert or deserts.org.
Deserts with an S at
with
the
an
end.
S.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been to that site as well. And that helps people see where there are lack of childcare services and potentially a pent-up demand. So it's a great thing to do for your market research to check that site out.
Yeah. And it also tells you like the percentage of lower income. They just did it over this year. Before it was a map showing what the deserted areas looked like in 2017, but I guess the pandemic made them redo it this year. But now you can even see like the percentage of Black and Hispanic community, the percentage of like median household income. There's a lot of information on that website. Mm-hmm. If people are trying to figure out where they want to place their program.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. I love that. Very cool. Well, thank you, Danielle Paige. Anything else that you would like to share with our podcast audience before we put a bow on it?
No, I think that really summarizes everything. If anybody is listening or watching on YouTube, I love that you do video replays now, because I'm someone that loves podcasts. I think I've listened to every one of yours except my own because I kept cringing. Yeah, if anybody wants to get in contact with me, they can email Danny@childcaresites.com, and I'd be happy to help if you don't know the right direction to go to start your childcare business.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Danielle Paige. It was great to have you back to the podcast. Great shares, nuggets, and content today. And thanks so much, everybody, for tuning in once again. Episode 97. We have 3 to go. We're on the big countdown to get to 100. Who's it going to be? We have a surprise guest on episode 100. Nice. So I'm excited.
Can't wait for that.
Yeah, it's going to be really good. All right. Well, thank you so much, and have a great day. Bye, everybody.
Bye.